Now that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is out in theaters, I'm here to give my spoiler-filled review of this movie, and I'm very excited to talk about this movie with you guys. If you've seen it, be sure to leave a comment of what you thought about it, and feel free to spoil this movie, because this is the spoiler review. If you haven't seen it and don't want to be spoiled, you can go and check out my non-spoiler review of this movie. I'll have a playlist where you can go check out that review and other reviews for stuff in the MCU. And after that, once you've seen the movie, you can come back and check out this review. And also be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now let's get into this spoiler review. So as I mentioned in my previous review, this movie has a lot of themes with grief and mourning, and it really gives time for the characters to show how the death of T'Challa has affected them and how it's affected Wakanda itself. And this movie starts right from the get-go with a gut punch, because the first scene is Shuri in her lab trying to recreate the herb that gives the Black Panther his powers, because T'Challa's sick. And in this scene, you don't see T'Challa, but you know he was briefly alive in this and then passed away. So right from the get-go, this movie just sort of like punches you in the gut. Just especially knowing that Chadwick Boseman did tragically pass away in real life. And one thing I did like about this movie was that while they never explain exactly what it was that killed T'Challa, they do hint that it was just like an illness that killed him, which is like what happened to Chadwick Boseman. So I kind of like that they kept it like that, like kept the character human. Some other people may prefer if he, died in battle protecting Wakanda, but I did like that they did that myself. That was one thing I didn't really mention in the non-spoiler review, but I did like that aspect too of the movie. And as I mentioned in the other review, the performances are all great, especially from Angela Bassett. She's great in this. Everybody was great. They all gave really good performances. They really brought in the emotion for this movie, having their moments to just mourn and just cry. And I think you could really tell that the passing of Chadwick, I think, really affected some of these actors, the way they were able to just convey these emotions. So all of that was great. And this movie also deals with how Wakanda is sort of opening up to the world, but hasn't been maybe doing some things that they promised. But this has also affected Talokan, which is where Namor, the villain of this movie, or more the antagonist of this movie, comes in, because other countries are looking for vibranium, because there's actually more vibranium around the world, and there's some around Talokan. So it's exposing or risking exposing Talokan, and Namor doesn't want that because of what happened when he was a kid. He does not like the world on land, and he has this mission to pretty much wage war with the above surface civilizations and conquer the world. And he's trying to see if he can use Wakanda as an ally, and that's where a lot of the conflict in this movie comes from. And I thought all that stuff was really good. I enjoyed that part of this movie. I enjoyed Namor as a villain. Don't think it's quite as strong as a Killmonger in the last movie, but I did enjoy him. The performance was really good, and he definitely had some like menacing presence at times, which I really liked. And yeah, there's some cool sequences with him as well. Like I said in my non-spoiler review, my favorite sequence in the movie was, at least action sequence, was when Namor floods Wakanda, and you see a bit of that in the trailer. That entire sequence I thought was very exciting, really well done with the way it was filmed, and it looked real too, because in the last Black Panther there were some CGI issues I found, but in this one, at that sequence, I thought the CGI was really good. There's some questionable green screen at a couple of scenes throughout the movie, but that sequence was really good. There's also a plot line in this movie where Shuri and Okoye go looking for this scientist in America who's built this machine that can actually detect vibranium, and it turns out to just be a university student who's just really smart, and she has like an Iron Man suit in this movie as well. And that storyline I quite enjoyed. There's a lot of fun moments with that too. A very exciting chase sequence too, which I quite enjoyed. Nice sort of combat scene too at the end of that with Okoye and some of the Talokan people. That was very exciting. We got to see Talokan, that kingdom, and I thought it looked really gorgeous in this movie. And one thing I was worried about, as I mentioned in my previous review, was I was worried it may look too much like the kingdom in Aquaman, but they do manage to make it look different so it doesn't feel like a copy at all, which was nice. But that aspect was really cool. It's kind of neat learning about the backstory behind that as well. You know, a bit of a, you know, exposition dump, but it was still, I found it interesting, cool, adding more lore to the MCU, which I quite enjoyed. That was really good. But as I mentioned in my other review, was what sort of held this movie down for me was the actual Black Panther part of this movie, and now I'm doing my spoiler review, I can actually explain it. But yeah, at the start of this movie, there's a scene with Angela Bassett's character and Shuri, where they're sort of talking about the Black Panther, because ultimately in this movie Shuri is the one who becomes Black Panther, which I'm sure a lot of people guessed, but I didn't mention that before because I don't think they officially announced that. But she does, and there's sort of talk about it at the start about her becoming Black Panther, but Shuri's like, no, that's like the past, that's old tradition, not gonna do that anymore, that sort of thing. And it's not brought up a whole lot, you know, after that, maybe a couple times, but not a lot, so it doesn't feel like there was a proper arc of her not sure if she's gonna become Black Panther and then ultimately deciding to become Black Panther. There was a bit of it, but I think it could have been stronger had there been more conflict with her deciding if she's going to become the new Black Panther. And then the other part of that arc, from her not being Black Panther to deciding to become Black Panther, that just didn't work for me, was the moment where she decides to become Black Panther is not really shown on screen too much. There's a nice scene with M'Baku and Shuri, where they have, you know, like a heart-to-heart moment that was really good. And then the next scene with Shuri, she's talking to the young scientist, where she pretty much announces, yeah, I'm gonna be Black Panther. I can't remember how she actually phrased it, but it's like, okay, I think would have been nice if there was a scene in between those two where she like really takes a moment to decide, okay, yes, I need to be Black Panther for Wakanda. Like, you could see where she would eventually get to that point from what she'd seen. The Queen, Angela Bassett's character, did die in this movie. That was another spoiler that I didn't go into. And when Shuri has this conversation with M'Baku, it's at the funeral. So like that moment is probably very integral for her to really just decide she's going to be. But I think if there's a scene in between that one and where she said she's, you know, going to be trying to be Black Panther, maybe she'd be by herself or something, I think it just would have made it stronger. And then my final issue where it just didn't work was she seemed, just the way it played out, it seemed like she decided to become Black Panther for the wrong reasons. Like the Black Panther is supposed to be like a leader, protector of Wakanda, where she more chose to be Black Panther for revenge, because, you know, when she shows up in this meeting where M'Baku and other people are, she's in her Black Panther costume. I shouldn't say costume, but Black Panther suit. And she's having a private conversation with M'Baku, and she's talking about, you know, fighting and killing Namor. M'Baku's no longer wanting to do that, and he's saying, oh, this, you know, it's not what your mother would have wanted. And then she sort of has this attitude like, well, my mom's gone, so what she wanted doesn't exist anymore. What matters is what I want. And like that just didn't sit well with me for what the Black Panther, from what my understanding is, what the Black Panther is supposed to be. And for me, had she decided to try and become Black Panther early in the movie, like maybe not, you know, succeed, like maybe not being great at being Black Panther because she's new to it, but still trying, and then as things played out, she got to this point where she's more revengeful, it wouldn't have bothered me as much because she was already being Black Panther, maybe chose for the right reasons, whereas this is like, I felt like you're more just doing it because you just wanted revenge, which doesn't really sit well with me with what Black Panther I think is supposed to be. Like I said, there's been other movies even in the comic book genre where they've done stuff like that, but that person's already been their, superhero, and then they hit a point where they become vengeful. If they did something like that in this movie, it would have worked better for me. But when it's just like, okay, she decides to be Black Panther for more revenge, has this attitude like, oh, it's what I want, that's what matters, it just wasn't sitting well to me. And when she eventually changes her ways to become better, it's done in a kind of a generic way where she's about to kill Namor, even though she's been impaled already, but she's able to fight him still, and she, they find out a way early how to overcome him, and she does that. She's ready to kill him, but then she has, visions, flashbacks of, I guess, what he had told her about his origins, and then remembering things about T'Challa and her and all that, and she's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And I was like, okay, that's kind of a generic way to resolve that. It's something that feels like that's how they usually do it, so it wasn't too interesting. And this is probably very much a hot take. I've not heard other people saying they didn't like the way they handled the Black Panther portion of this movie. So far, I'm the only one I know who it didn't quite work for. So if other people, if it works for you, that's great. This is just my opinion, and I'm just telling you what my opinion is. That portion of the movie just didn't quite land with me. I had some other issues, like the movie I think is just a bit too long. There's a storyline with Martin Freeman's character. They bring him back, and I like him as a character, and I like him as an actor, and I enjoy his character. But that storyline, whenever it popped up, I just like, back to this. Kind of wish they cut it out. But yeah, that portion of this movie was my biggest issue. And when it's a Black Panther movie and it's a Black Panther aspect that just wasn't working for me, that's not great. The rest of it, there's a lot of stuff that I thought was great, but that part just really held it down for me, unfortunately. So I think other people, it'll be fine for them, it'll probably work for them. For me, that part just didn't quite work. So for me, that's why I think I do like this movie. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good movie, but I think it had the part about, like with the actual Black Panther part, had it just worked for me more, then maybe I would have thought this movie was great like the last one. But for me, it's just good, which is fine. It's a movie that I like, which is good. But if this part did work for you, let me know if it did. If it didn't work for you, let me know as well. Let me know what you thought of other parts of this movie as well. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about, and I can't go into everything. And like I said, I enjoyed most of this movie. Just that aspect just really didn't work for me, unfortunately. So yeah, that's sort of my overall thoughts and spoilers of this movie. So guys, let me know what you thought about it, and feel free to talk spoilers. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for some more reviews soon. I should have a review out for Don't Worry Darling in a couple of days, so stay tuned for that. And until then, take care everybody.